What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Real Talk Recaps, back with another episode, and today we're diving deep into the world of property investing with some absolute gold from PK Gupta's recent podcast episode. If you're even remotely interested in real estate, especially in Australia, you know PK is the guy. He drops bombs of knowledge on how to legally slash your tax bill as a property investor, talking everything from cash flow hacks to depreciation strategies that most people don't even know exist. Trust me, this episode is a gold mine. But listen, we're not just going to sit here and talk about taxes, we're taking it a step further. I'm breaking down 6 of the most actionable, beginner-friendly tips PK dropped in that podcast that you can use right now to crush it when you buy your first, second, or even 10th investment property. We're talking real strategies backed by real-life examples so you can see how this stuff actually works in the real world. So buckle up, grab your notebooks, and get ready to take some notes because things are about to get real practical real fast. Let's do it. Alright, let's jump right into tip number 1, which is arguably the most important. Always, and I mean always, do your due diligence. Seriously guys, this cannot be overstated. This isn't just some fancy real estate jargon, it's about protecting yourself and your hard-earned money. PK told a story in the podcast about a guy who almost bought a property in a flood zone. Can you imagine? All that money down the drain because he didn't do his homework. So, what does due diligence actually look like? Well, for starters, it means ordering those flood reports. You'd be amazed at how many properties are at risk that you'd never even suspect. Next, get a soil test done. You need to know what you're building on, literally. Bad soil can mean massive headaches and even bigger costs down the line. And don't forget about those pesky overlays and easements. These can seriously limit what you can and can't do with your property. So you better know about them up front. You don't want to find out after you've already signed on the dotted line that you can't build that extra unit or put in that pool you've always wanted. The good news is, PK's podcast guest dodged a bullet because he had a subject to DA approval clause in his contract. This basically means he could back out of the deal without losing his deposit if the development approval didn't come through. This is huge, people. Speaking of legal clauses, that brings us nicely to tip number 2, which is all about protecting yourself with the right legal jargon. Now I know what you're thinking. Graham, I'm no lawyer. I don't understand all that legal mumbo-jumbo. And you know what? That's totally okay. You don't need to be a legal eagle to understand the basics. The key takeaway here is to always have exit clauses written into your contracts. These are your safety net, your get-out-of-jail-free card. They give you the flexibility to walk away from a deal if something doesn't feel right, or if your circumstances change. PK talked about 2 really important clauses, subject to finance and subject to development approval. We already touched on subject to DA approval, but subject to finance is just as crucial, especially in today's market. It basically means you're only obligated to buy the property if you can secure financing. This gives you time to shop around for the best loan rates and terms, and if you can't get approved, you're off the hook. These clauses are your best friends when you're starting out in property. They give you that extra layer of protection and peace of mind, knowing that you're not locked into a deal that you can't get out of. Don't be afraid to push back on sellers or their agents to include these clauses. Remember, this is your money, your investment, and your future on the line. Now, I know a lot of you are probably thinking, Graham, this is all great, but I don't have a ton of cash lying around to invest in property. And you know what? I hear you. But here's the thing. You don't need to be a millionaire to get started in real estate. In fact, PK shared some killer strategies in the podcast for getting into the market with very little capital. One of the strategies he talked about was option contracts. These are like golden tickets in the real estate world. Basically, an option contract gives you the right, but not the obligation, to buy a property at a set price within a specific time frame. This means you can lock in a property today, even if you don't have the cash to buy it right now. Another strategy PK mentioned was vendor finance. This is where the seller actually becomes your bank, financing the purchase of the property for you. It's more common than you think, and it can be a great way to get your foot in the door, especially if you don't have a strong credit history or a big down payment. And then there's the classic joint venture, which is basically like teaming up with a buddy to buy a property. You pool your resources together, share the costs, and split the profits. This is a fantastic way to leverage other people's capital and expertise, especially if you're just starting out. PK actually shared a story about a beginner developer who used an option contract to secure a property at a great price. They then brought in a money partner through a joint venture to fund the purchase and development. The result? A successful project and a tidy profit for both parties, so yeah, you don't need to be rolling in dough to make it happen in real estate. Now let's talk strategy. The real estate world is full of different ways to make money, from flipping houses to building apartments. It's easy to get overwhelmed and jump from one shiny object to the next. But here's the thing, you don't need to be a jack of all trades in real estate. In fact, it's better to be a master of one. PK gave some really solid advice in the podcast. Pick one property strategy and stick to it. Don't try to do everything at once. Focus on becoming an expert in one area, whether it's renovations, subdivisions, or developing townhouses. Become the go-to person for that strategy in your market. And here's another pro tip from PK. Focus on one local council area. Get to know that area like the back of your hand. Learn the zoning rules, the building codes, the demographics, and what types of properties are in high demand. By specializing in one strategy and one area, you'll become an expert much faster. You'll know the ins and outs of the local market, you'll build relationships with key players, and you'll be able to spot opportunities that others miss. Plus, it's much easier to manage your investments when they're all in the same geographic area. Alright, let's talk numbers. Real estate is a numbers game, and if you're not crunching the numbers, you're basically flying blind. PK emphasized the importance of running a feasibility check before you buy any property. This is non-negotiable, people. A feasibility study is basically a fancy way of saying you're going to analyze the heck out of a deal before you commit. You're going to look at all the potential costs, all the potential revenue, and figure out if the project is actually profitable. PK shared a story about a developer who almost lost a ton of money on a project because they didn't run a proper feasibility study. They found a property, they got excited, and they were ready to dive in headfirst. But then, they decided to run the numbers. And guess what? The project was a dud. The feasibility study revealed that the development application fees were through the roof, and the holding costs were going to eat into their profits. Thankfully, they caught it just in time and were able to walk away from the deal. That feasibility check saved them a ton of money and a whole lot of heartache. My last piece of advice, and this is something PK emphasized throughout the entire podcast, is to start small. You don't need to go out and buy a massive apartment complex or a huge development site right out of the gate. In fact, it's much smarter to start small and scale up gradually as you gain experience and confidence. Think about it like this. Would you rather make a small mistake on a small deal, or a massive mistake on a massive deal? I think we all know the answer to that one. Starting small allows you to learn the ropes, make mistakes without breaking the bank, and build momentum. And here's a bonus tip: track everything. Keep a detailed journal or spreadsheet of all your deals, your expenses, your lessons learned, everything. This is invaluable information that you can refer back to time and time again. What were the market conditions like when you bought that property? What strategies worked well? What mistakes did you make? This is how you learn and improve as a real estate investor. Don't just rely on your memory, write it down. There you go. 6 practical beginner-friendly tips inspired by PK Gupta's insights. These are the same strategies real developers use to build wealth and avoid costly mistakes. Remember, knowledge is only powerful if you use it. So, pick one of these tips and start implementing it today. Don't wait for the perfect time or the perfect deal, just get started. If this helped you, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. Which of these tips are you going to try first? I'd love to hear your plans. And hey, if you want even more real estate gold, make sure to check out the full PK Gupta podcast episode. The link is in the description below. Until next time, stay informed, stay inspired, and keep crushing it in real estate.